فيقول ربنا بعد أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم هل جزاء الإحسان إلا الإحسان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان صدق الله العظيم. Toward the end of the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, there is a scene that I'd like to paint and begin with, where the Sahaba, the companions of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, were sitting in Masjid al-Nabawi along with him during the regular halaqat and the azkar that they used to do and the learnings that the Sahaba Kiram used to have from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when a man came and entered the masjid. That man had extremely dark jet black hair, he had clean hair, he was wearing white thobe, white garments, extremely white. No one recognized him. And everybody was surprised to see such a person because they lived in the desert. If you don't recognize the person when you live in a small community, then that person must be a traveler. They must have come from somewhere else. And if they're a traveler, then their hair would be disheveled, their clothes would be dirty. But this person had no such signature on him, so the companions were extremely amazed to see this man enter. And then they were further amazed when this man came and sat in front of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And he came close to him and put his hands down in front of him, or some narrations say on his thighs. And he asked him a question. He asked, "Tell me, what is Islam?" Before we continue, the Sahaba were amazed. Look at the audacity of this person. The Sahaba, the companions of Rasulullah, were so in awe of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, so shy of him, that they couldn't even look him in the eye. They wouldn't speak louder than him. And this person is coming, sitting right in front of him, and they felt that this is extremely bold of such a person to do that. When he asked, "Tell me, what is Islam?" Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam described the 5 pillars of Islam that we know, that an tashhada an la ilaha illallah wa anna Muhammadur Rasulullah, pillar number 1, wa tuqim as-salah, and pillar number 2, which is to establish the salah. The pillar number 3, wa tu'ti az-zakah, pillar number 3, and give the zakah, wa tasum Ramadan, and fast the Ramadan, wa tahujju al-bayta in istata'ta ilayhi sabila, and perform hajj if you are able to do so, which is the 5th pillar. And then the man replied, "Sadaqt." He says, "You told the truth." Again, the Sahaba were extremely amazed. Look at the audacity and the boldness of this person, that not only he's asking a question in such a bold way, but when Rasulullah ﷺ actually responds, he actually tells him, "Yes, you're right. You're telling the truth." They're like, how bold and audacious of this person to do such a thing. And then he followed it up with question number 2. "And tell me," he asked, "about Iman." And Rasulullah ﷺ then listed out the 6 pillars of Iman. "An tu'mina billah," that you believe in Allah, wa malaikatih, and His angels, wa kutubi, and His books, wa rusuli, and His messengers, wal yawm al-akhir, and the last day, the day of judgment, wa tu'min bil qadri khayrihi wa sharrihi, and that you believe in the predestination, the qadr, whether it's good or whether it's bad, the good of it and the bad of it. And then he said, "Sadaqt." Yes, you're correct. You told the truth. And then he continued with question number 3. He asked, "Tell me about Ihsan. What is Ihsan?" Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam responded again with a beautiful response. He said, "An ta'bud Allah ka'annaka tarah." You worship Allah as if you see Him. فَإِن لَمْ تَكُنْ تَرَاهُ فَإِنَّهُ يَرَاكَ. And if you're unable to see Him, then no, definitely He is seeing you. There are some other questions he asked about. Tell me about when is the hour coming, when is the day of judgment coming? He said, "I don't know," and the questioner doesn't know, and the one who is being asked doesn't know, and he asked about the signs of the day of judgment. And then the hadith, toward the end, Rasulullah ﷺ asked the companions, "Do you know who this was?" And they said, "We don't know. Allah and His Messenger know best." And he says, "This was Jibril." This was Jibril alayhi salam. He came to teach you your deen. He came to teach you your religion. So many benefits can be extracted from this hadith. This very, very famous hadith, which I'm sure all of you are familiar with, is known as Hadith Jibril. Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal famously said, all of Islam revolved around this hadith. 3 components of our deen that were described: Islam, Iman, and Ihsan, and some things about the Day of Judgment toward the end, which are also covered in the pillars of Iman. He said at the end, He came to teach you your religion, which means everything that is described in this hadith, everything that is, the Rasulullah ﷺ answered the questions and the questions that were asked, that comprises our deen. It is unfortunate that many of us, we only focus on the first pillar. We know about the list of the second pillar, and we hardly do anything about the third pillar. All of these pillars are important. All of these 13 things that are described, the 5 pillars of Islam, the 6 pillars of Iman, and what I would constitute the 2 pillars of Ihsan. Islam, everybody follows. They know that they need to check the box and follow do the salah, pay the zakat, etc., etc. We know what we need to believe. We don't really often think about that too much. But then Ihsan, we hardly know much about it and what constitutes it. So today, on the first day of Jummah in this beautiful masjid, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give barakah in this masjid, and barakallahu feekum for coming and joining us celebrate the Yawm al-Jum'ah, the first Yawm al-Jum'ah with us. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala increase you. So today I wanted as the first khutbah to talk about the foundations of our deen. Which are these 3 things? The 13 sub-things that are listed. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَأْمُرُ بِالْعَدْلِ وَالْإِحْسَانِ وَإِيتَاءِ ذِي الْقُرْبَى وَيَنْهَى عَنِ الْفَحْشَاءِ وَالْمُنكَرِ وَالْبَغْيِ يَعِظُكُمْ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَذَكَّرُونَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Allah commands you to have justice, to show justice, to have justice in everything. And He commands you with ihsan. This is a commandment from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Let's better understand what ihsan is. The famous Raghib al-Asfahani, who wrote possibly one of the first books on the dictionaries of the Quran. He says, he defines ihsan in such a beautiful way. He speaks about this ayah that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is commanding you to show justice and show ihsan. He then describes what is important. It is justice more important, or is ihsan more important? And he said, ihsan fal-ihsan fawq al-adl. He said ihsan is more important than justice. He said because adl, أن العدل هو أن يعطى ما عليه ويأخذ ماله. That adl, justice, is when you give what you owe somebody in equal amount. That is justice. And then you take what is owed to you. It's equal. But he said, what ihsan أن يعطى أكثر مما عليه ويأخذ أقل مما له. He said, but ihsan is when you give more than what you owe somebody, and you take less than the other person actually owes you. So he says, because of this, ihsan takes a higher degree. What a beautiful definition of ihsan. The concept of ihsan is repeated again and again and again in the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَاللَّهُ يُحِبُّ الْمُحْسِنِينَ وَأَحْسِنُوا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves those who do ihsan, those who show excellence. وَأَحْسِنُوا إِنَّ اللَّهَ يُحِبُّ الْمُحْسِنِينَ. And show excellence, exude excellence, because surely Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves those who show excellence. وَإِنَّ اللَّهَ لَمَعَ الْمُحْسِنِينَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is absolutely the helper of those who do ihsan. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, مَعَ الْمُحْسِنِينَ مِنْ سَبِيلٍ وَاللَّهُ غَفُورٌ رَحِيمٌ. That those who show excellence, there is no way anything can harm them, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is all forgiving, all merciful. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells the Bani Israel, إِنْ أَحْسَنْتُمْ أَحْسَنْتُمْ لِأَنفُسِكُمْ. If you do ihsan, you do it for your own selves. وَإِنْ أَسَأْتُمْ فَلَهَا. And if you do not do this, if you instead turn away from ihsan, then that is upon you. Because what you do good, what you do show excellence in, is what comes back to you in multitudes of rewards. Now let's look at the first two pillars that we talked about, Islam and Iman. We right now kind of introduced Ihsan, but let's look at the first two pillars through the lens of Ihsan. What is Ihsan and what is its relationship with Islam and Iman? Ihsan is excellence. It is doing more than what is expected. It is doing more than you might owe. So it applies to everything in Islam and everything in Iman. In what is Islam? What is the first pillar? It is the Shahada. When we say the Shahada, it is not just lip service that we give. We need to feel it. We need to understand what is it that we mean that there is no God except Allah. La ilaha illallah. And that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is his final messenger. Muhammadun Rasulullah. We need to understand what this means. We do not have enough time. This is an extremely large and deep topic. When it comes to ibadah, we can check a box and pray when it is time to pray. How excellent is your prayer is when you delve into the area of ihsan, and then you can measure yourself on the dipstick of ihsan. Where do I lie? How is my prayer? Is it the bare minimum, or is it as good as I can get it? Do I have khushu? Can I focus? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the famous hadith that when the person he's praying and he turns away, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asks, Ya abdi, where are you going? What are you turning to? Where is your mind going? Am I not more important than the things that are on your mind? When it comes to zakat, we need to understand why we give the zakat. Yes, we know we need to give the zakat at a certain time, in a certain portion, 2.5% of the annual savings that you might have, etc., etc. However, do you feel that your money is dirty before you give the zakat? Unless you give the zakat. If that is not, you're not feeling that, and you're not feeling that what I'm putting down in zakat, that is going to come back to me on the day of judgment on multiple folds. We haven't reached the level of ihsan with that. When it comes to fasting, are we doing the bare minimum? Are we just hungry and thirsty during Ramadan, or are we actually guarding our tongue and guarding ourselves from anger, spending extra time in ibadah and worship and tilawat al-Quran, etc., etc.? Have we basically, just to give you an idea, have we reached those levels of ihsan in the Islam part? We all do the Islam part. Let's try to put excellence into each and every action. When it comes to Iman in Allah, and notice Allah is the centerpiece of all three categories. Islam, it starts with the Shahadatain. Iman starts with the belief in Allah. Ihsan also starts with you worship Allah like you see Him. So Allah is a common piece. Belief in Allah is a common piece across all three categories. However, in Iman in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, how deep is our Iman? How do we understand Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Do we understand the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? How Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes Himself? Are we in awe of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Quran says, فَعَلَ. Know that Allah, there is no God worthy of worship other than Him. It is actually a commandment for us to know about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and believing in the angels, and us thinking about the angels when we are doing dhikr, and believing in the message, the messengers who brought the message, malaikati wa rusuli, right? The messengers. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has the messengers because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't create this world without purpose. This world exists with a purpose in mind. This is why the Prophet comes. We need to understand this is what the pillars of Islam, pillars of Iman rather, are trying to describe. That it is through the messengers you know about the Day of Judgment, and then you know about the predestination. Because our ultimate objective is, after belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is striving for having high marks and high grades on the Day of Judgment. Those are the lenses of Ihsan that we need to look Islam and Iman with. But Ihsan goes deeper than that. One way you can understand is Islam are the external actions that we do. It's salah, zakah, siyam, hajj, etc. These are the external actions. Iman bil ghayb, in believing in the angels, believing in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, believing in the message that is the Quran or the Bible or the Torah, believing in those books, believing in predestination. Those are all internal beliefs. Those are inside. Together they form these first two pillars, and they are enhanced through this third pillar, which is al-Ihsan. Like we worship Allah, we do ibadah of Allah, and ibadah doesn't just mean salah, by the way. It encompasses all those things. We worship Allah like we can see Him. And of course we can see Him, but we need to know He sees us. This pillar, if it doesn't transform us from inside and outside, and it doesn't help us become contributors and builders of this world, the first two pillars, they fall short. You are not going to show excellence in the third pillar of Ihsan. The excellence of your ibadah and the excellence of your iman are going to be weak. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands us, idfa' billati hiya ahsan. Defend yourself with what is better, with what is ihsan, what is excellent. Excellent doesn't mean you always turn the other cheek. Excellence might be to make the best possible decision that you can make. There are, of course, we started with this ayah, unlimited rewards for people of ihsan. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran talks so highly of the people of ihsan. This is why I started with هل جزاء الإحسان إلا الإحسان. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Al-Rahman asks the question, a rhetorical question. Does the reward of doing ihsan, does the reward of showing excellence, should it not be excellence? And look at the broken excellence of the imperfect human beings, which is we. We are imperfect. Our excellence is never going to be excellent. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promises that if you attempt excellence, how broken it may be, you will be rewarded with excellence. هل جزاء الإحسان إلا الإحسان. Is the reward for ihsan, should it not be ihsan? Ihsan can be further divided as it relates to Islam and Iman into other things. We have to think in terms of relationships that we carry. What is the first and foremost relationship? It is our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How is our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? We need to show excellence in that relationship, and we talked about this. Second is our relationship with the creation. There is our relationship with the Creator and our relationship with the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Someone asked Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, what is the thing that I should do most that will help me enter Jannah? He said, have taqwa of Allah, have fear of Allah, wa husn al-khuluq, and have excellence in character. Have an excellent character. These are the two things, these are the two relationships that we need to show ihsan in. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaking about ihsan, immediately talking about the tawheed and belief in Him. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for example, in one ayah describes these relationships. He says, لا تعبدون إلا الله. Do not worship anyone other than Allah. وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا. And show ihsan to your parents. Creation relationship number one. The most important relationship we can have with the creation is our relationship with our parents. And we need to show excellence. It's a commandment in the Quran. وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا وَذِي الْقُرْبَى. And to the near relatives. وَالْيَتَامَى. And to the orphans. وَالْمَسَاكِينَ. And to the needy. وَقُولُوا لِلنَّاسِ حُسْنًا. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala essentially does a catch-all. He says, these are your priorities. It is the parents first and your relatives next, and the orphans and the needy, and then everyone else, regardless whether they're Muslim or non-Muslim. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَقُولُوا لِلنَّاسِ حُسْنًا. And show excellence when you speak with people. You show excellence when you speak with people. Then He says, وَأَقِيمُوا الصَّلَاةِ. And then offer salah, establish salah. وَآتُوا الزَّكَاةِ. ثُمَّ تَوَلَّيْتُمْ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا مِنْكُمْ وَأَنْتُمْ مُعْرِضُونَ. In another ayah, other relationships are described that are expounded upon. Again, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَاعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ وَلَا تُشْرِكُوا بِهِ شَيْئًا. Worship Allah and don't do shirk with Him with anything else. وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا. And give ihsan to your parents. Again, right after Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right after again and again and again and again in the Quran. Parents. وَبِذِي الْقُرْبَى. And do ihsan to your relatives, your family, your wife, your children, your uncles, your cousins, everyone else. وَالْيَتَامَى. Why the orphans? They don't have a family. They don't have a family. Because parents are important, Orphans don't have parents. So the second priority is yatim, wal-masakin, the needy, وَجَارِ ذِي الْقُرْبَى, and your neighbors that are near you, وَجَارِ الْجُنُبِ, and those neighbors that are around you, your community, وَالصَّاحِبِ بِالْجَنْبِ, and the person who is next to you, could be anyone, وَابْنِ السَّبِيلِ, and those who are traveling at that time. Travelers, they didn't have anything else. There weren't hotels and motels and pit stops where they could stop. They were hungry, destitute. They didn't have probably their food finished. Very important. وَمَا مَلَكَتْ أَيْمَانُكُمْ, and whatever is under your control. In this case, it was servitude of the servants. But in our world, this is, if you're an employer, you have employees, you need to show ihsan to them because you're responsible for them. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala again speaks about all these relationships. We don't have time to talk about it. Hatta, even Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about doing excellence to the animals. We all know that one person who was not a righteous person, he saw a thirsty dog who was licking sand. That's how thirsty he was. He gave him water. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said he entered Jannah. Just doing ihsan to animals. And the woman who tied up her cat, did not feed the cat died. Regardless of how righteous she may have been, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala entered her into hellfire. Transactions, when we are buying and selling and signing contracts, we need to honor the contract, every single word in the contract. A true muhsin, a true Muslim cares extremely much about every single line in every single contract you will ever sign. For example, the people of Shu'aib were destroyed. Why? Surah Al-Mutaffifin tells us, وَيْلٌ لِلْمُطَفِّفِينَ. Cursed be those who actually give you less than what somebody actually buys. They weighed less, they mixed impurities in what they were selling. That nation was destroyed because of these acts. And then we need to do ihsan for ourselves, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, how do we transform ourselves? It is not easy. It is not easy. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaking about muhsineen says, الَّذِينَ يُنْفِقُونَ فِي السَّرَّاءِ وَالضَّرَّاءِ. These are the ones who are spending when it's easy time and when it's difficult. وَالْكَاظِمِينَ الْغَيْظَ, and they have self-control. They control their rage. They control their anger. How are you? We all build our muscles and we all practice whatever our hobbies might be. We all take interest. How much do we practice in anger management? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَالْكَاظِمِينَ الْغَيْظَ, those who control their anger, وَالْعَافِينَ عَنِ النَّاسِ, and they overlook the faults of people. Do we practice this? This is what we need to practice. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ends this ayah with, وَاللَّهُ يُحِبُّ الْمُحْسِنِينَ, and Allah loves of those who do ihsan. And the best ihsan is taqwa, and having the fear of Allah. This is the path that we need to continue to struggle upon. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and I'll end here, وَالَّذِينَ جَاهَدُوا فِينَا لَنَهْدِيَنَّهُمْ سُبُلَنَا. Those who struggle in our path, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give them hidayah and give them the path that they need to continue to make it easy for them. وَإِنَّ اللَّهَ لَمَعَ الْمُحْسِنِينَ. I lied. Let me end with another ayah. لِلَّذِينَ أَحْسَنُوا الْحُسْنَى وَزِيَادَةً. Those who show excellence, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, will get al-Husna. Not just this Masjid al-Husna. Al-Husna, the best kind of reward. Those who show ihsan. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala only specifically in this ayah says, وَزِيَادَةً, and they will get even more. When you get the best kind of reward, what is this more? What is this ziyada? We learn that this is having the opportunity to see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Jannah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us among the people of ihsan, make us from among the people of dhikr, make us among the people of patience, make us among the people of gratitude.